All right, I'm going to get going here. This is a lightning presentation called Punch Up, Lift Down, Grow Your Career While Building a Lifelong Network. I'm Isaac Johnson. I work in the Triple H and H&P and personal care groups under Brian Irvin. I do want to call something out. I was looking for some art for my slides, so I asked, because it's punching a boxer in an office, and the AI did give me a boxer in the office, but not exactly the boxer I was thinking of, but it was too good not to leave in there. So there's an explanation for a boxer in an office. Things I want to cover here are some of the fears we have about kind of giving feedback about that discourse or argumentation. Why it's good for the company, why it's good for your manager, and ultimately why it's good for you. And then I'm going to talk about how we put it into practice, like how do we actually do something about this. So let's talk about fears, right? Some of the fears that we have in our head is debating is fighting. Oh, I don't want to fight. We're friends. We want to have a good time. I don't want to be an argumentative person. It's fighting, and fighting's bad, right? We feel that arguing is harmful. If I argue with Vivek, I'm going to make Vivek feel really bad. I don't want Vivek to feel bad. You know, I don't want to argue with him. He really is passionate about this. So we feel like we're going to be harmful. We're going to hurt the team and then arguing. We sometimes feel like my manager will want to get rid of me. Oh gosh, you're not going to like Isaac. Isaac's the one who's always yelling or being mad or arguing back. I should push him off to some side venture, you know, just make him do subpoenas forever. And the one that I really do fear, this is one that is a real one that I hold on to a lot. I fear I'll be seen as an angry person. Oh gosh, people see me just as like angry Hulk smash coming into rooms, and I don't want to be seen as that. So, I mean, sometimes personally, I put silly pictures on myself and team just to like try to liven the mood because I don't want to be seen as a grumpy Gus. So we can sometimes feel like if we argue, people will perceive us as an angry person. So let's talk about why this is actually good, okay? So the worst solutions are born in the vacuum of trust and free discourse. A quote I got from the Harvard Business Review is, when you and your coworkers push one another to continually ask if there's a better approach, that creative force is likely to lead to new solutions. That discourse comes up with those better solutions. Micromanagement, which is kind of the opposite of this, reduces productivity and engagement. There was a management article that said the time it takes to demonstrate to employees each and every task eventually will erode the time devoted to actual production. That is, if your micromanager, whether it's your lead or your boss, has to sit down and say, do this step, this step, this step, neither one of you are getting stuff done very fast, and it's not a very creative work. It dissuades employees from making sound decisions that they're dependent on their manager to guide them in completing tasks. I'm sure every one of us has been in some sort of team where you go, well, we really can't decide that until Susan's here because Susan has to sign off on it, right? And so if you have these stopgaps, you have these bottlenecks that you just slow everything down. And so that's another problem with micromanagement. Something as I was researching this talk that I did not think of, this kind of came to me as I was looking into it, is this actually creates a more diverse and inclusive work environment. So the quote was, it was from an article, managers and employees should get over the instinctual urge to avoid conflict. They need to abandon the idea that consensus is an end in and of itself. In a well-run, diverse team, substantive disagreements do not need to become personal. Ideas either have merit and value or they do not. This is the definition of a meritocracy. Think about it this way. If you have a team that's diverse, of different people, different backgrounds, different types, and you let the ideas they put forward be the thing that gets judged, then the best ideas win. Maybe the quiet person is the one who has the best idea, that otherwise it's just the people who are friends with each other or loud or look alike or know how to talk to each other win out on ideas. So this kind of idea actually helps build our DEI initiative, actually helps build diversity and inclusion in the work environment because the best idea wins regardless of who it comes from. The reason why it's good for your manager, you weren't hired to say yes. You were hired for your skills, wisdom, and talent. If we just needed people to say yes, we could spend a lot less money. We could hire a kid off the street to just say yes, right? You were hired because of your knowledge and your background. And rubber stamping your uptrees decisions, whether that's your lead or your manager or your architect, it undermines those skills. It removes the necessary checks on problematic issues, right? Bad ideas end up bubbling in the top because no one's willing to say, that's a really bad idea. Out of the box thinking can create breakthroughs, right? So disagreement means conversation. You're talking it out. You're actually sorting out the problem. You're getting through to a conclusion. Having your team disagree with you fosters out of the box thinking, which in many cases is just what is needed for a breakthrough idea or successful initiative. It can be especially useful to approach situations from different perspectives. Now, something I feel strongly about, this is kind of ancillary to it, but as a manager, well, I'm not a manager now, but at times I've been a manager, it's about servant leadership. So the definition from the Greenleaf Institute for Servant Leadership is, servant leadership is a non-traditional leadership philosophy embedded in a set of behaviors and practices that place the primary emphasis on the well-being of those being served. The idea is that you'll grow your staff to rise above you. You know, the goal is to, you are there for their benefit. They're not there for your benefit. You're there to enable them and remove their roadblocks, not vice versa. So when you kind of practice this, you're accelerating them, you'll, in the end, it'll benefit you. There's a podcaster I like. He's just a Hollywood writer named Rob Long, and does a podcast called Martini Shop. But he often talks about helping young writers and always point them going, you're my retirement plan. You're my retirement plan, because when you help those junior people later in life, that circles back to you in kind of a karmic kind of way. So it's good to kind of focus on servant leadership when you're in that managerial position. Let's talk about why this is good for you. Job dissatisfaction. Being a yes person is boring as hell. If all you do is sit back, don't say anything in meetings, and just say yes, that's a really dull job. It eliminates the ability for creative problem solving. That's why engineers got into this in the first place, is to get stuck in and fix things. You will be sought out. I promise you this. This comes from 23 years of experience. If you are engaged and you are vocal and you're coming forward with positive solutions to problems, not just a naysayer, but positive solutions, upper management will look for you. They'll say, that's a person who can solve problems. That's a person I want on my team. I have a new idea for them. It'll open doors to new challenges. Lastly, it'll grow your skills. So when you kind of engage and you disagree, it's great for kind of resume building and learning new tech. Something I hadn't thought of. I got this from another HBR article. When you disagree with someone or something, you're really negotiating. Successful negotiations are about reaching a probable, mutually beneficial outcome. So when you start to argue your ideas in meetings, you're actually working on your skills of negotiating, which will be useful all in life, regardless whether it's at work or at home, etc. Let's talk about how we put this into practice. Be polite but firm. Okay? When you have to give feedback, whether it's to your peers or your manager or your leads, give your feedback with alternatives. Don't just be a naysayer. Don't just say, oh, this is stupid. This sucks. No, say, I see this issue. There's some issues with this idea. Here's some of the consequences if we go down this path. And here are some alternatives if you have some. Come to the table with alternatives. Allow your manager or lead to make the final call. This is really hard. This is really hard for me. I'll say it's really hard for me. Is to say, this is a path I think we should go, and let your lead or manager say, I don't think so. Say, okay, I've said my piece. We'll move on. It's hard to move on. And there's a big caveat. Unless you think patient safety or security is at risk. I promise you, if I talk to Joel and I say, I disagree with Brian's decision, I think patient security is at risk, we'll have a talk, right? So always, if you feel security or safety is at risk or PHI leakage, you take that up. You don't, that's a dog to fight for. The reason I put an asterisk there is I've had so many managers, if I was polite to them, they'd kick me out of the room and say, I don't know who you are, get out, right? So polite is the asterisk, and talk in the parlance that you talk to your leader manager at. So some of my managers and leads I've worked with, we swear at each other like sailors. It's terrible, but that's how we talk. So polite within the context of your relationship. Never take it personal. Regardless of your role, you are not your ideas. A criticism of an idea is not a criticism of you. I mean, I think this is something that as you move into senior leaders, senior engineer and principal engineer, you start to have to kind of learn this. It's just an idea, you know, you have it, you move on. Now, this comes as a lead or manager. Give in and back your people. Sometimes you damn well know the right solution, but your engineers have a real passion to do it another way. So you got to give in and be surprised. You might be surprised with the results. I was running a team at another company years ago, and one of my engineers came to me and really wanted to write a class in Rust. I'm like, I don't want to use Rust. None of us know Rust. He really wanted to use Rust. And I said, okay, Anthony, if you want to use Rust, we can use Rust, but here's the consequence. You got to do it. The tickets come to you when we have to debug it, and you have to take some time to teach us what you did. He took the ball, he ran with it, he ran Rust, he taught us, he took the issues. We didn't do another one, I might add, but I gave him the win. It was what he wanted. It allowed his right brain to kick in. And sometimes you just got to say, okay, not the way I would do it, but let's go ahead and do it. Also, fight for your people. Sometimes you're a lead, you have years of experience, you have a way you want to do it, but all of your people have a way they want to do it. Sometimes you just have to represent their point of view and go to the table and say, we really should implement this in Python. We should implement this in Java. Or we really should change the database model because your team has agreed that that's the right approach. And you got to back them up. Avoid being two-faced. Like this is where you're struggling, you're having disagreements, you don't agree with the decision, and you need to talk to people. You don't want to be duplicitous. You don't want to be two-faced. It erodes trust, and it's exhausting to remember what you told to one person and what you told to the other person. There's a really fine line between vetching and undermining. So there's people I talk to in life, in the company, when I'm really frustrated, and we can have that venting water cooler talk, and I could say, oh man, I think the decision we just made in the team is really dumb, and I hate it. And you can argue, and you can have fun, you can get it out of your system and move on, right? But there's a difference between calling up and saying, I really think Jimmy is an idiot. He's a terrible. I think we should stop listening to Jimmy. Let's just kick him out of the meetings. That's undermining. That's not a thing to do. But vetching is a thing that you can do. Complaining, water cooler, just get it out of your system. There's a difference. And so don't be two-faced. Seek others' inputs. There's been times in my life, oh my gosh, where I was so convinced that people were against me. I was part of a team. I was at TurboTax. I got into a really high-functioning team. And I thought that the architect of the team just hated me. I'm like, I'm never going to get anything past Bishop. Everything I say, he says no to. And my coworker pulled me aside and says, you never come with your reasons for what you want to do. It's a meritocracy here. If you come with your reasons, your idea might win. And there was a time I came to Bishop and I said, this is what we need to do. And we teased it out. He did why. He goes, you're right. I was wrong. We should do your thing. And I was young. I was like, yay! But it was a meritocracy. The best idea won. And I didn't really see it because I was so impassioned with my idea, I couldn't let it go. If you really are stuck, if you're in a project that isn't working, you can't get behind that decision, ask to be taken off it. Find a new project. You'd be surprised. This was earlier in my life, how many times where I thought that I was stuck and I couldn't get out of this. And I talked to my manager and said, I can't deal with working with, this guy, and it's just not working out. My boss says, oh, you don't have to. I'll have so-and-so work with him. You go work on this other thing. They're happy to move the chess pieces around. And all of a sudden you can find that maybe toxic relationship or that troublesome project that you can't get behind is now not on your plate. And now you're in the company happy, your boss is happy, and all you had to do was ask. And sometimes as engineers, I don't think we think to ask the question, can I be moved around? I'm not jiving on this. And lastly, I'm going to give caution to this last bullet point, but document your opinions. If you really feel like a decision's not good, write it down and say, I will follow your direction, but here are the things I think are going to be a problem. We're going to need to do with this. We need to do with this. And send an email. You can send it to your manager or send it to yourself and move on. Sometimes that's just a good way to kind of get it out of your system and move on. That's it. That's all I got. That's 13 minutes. So thank you for attending the lightning talk. I suppose we got a minute or two. Any questions? Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great presentation. You have suggestions or lessons learned on the personal point, right? Because there's kind of two sides to that of there's people that don't necessarily know how to not take it personal. And then also there's bad actors that act like they're not doing things in a personal sense, but kind of subtly or subconsciously do label things as personal. That I'm not saying something in a personal sense, but they're kind of subconsciously deciding that this is personal.
Yeah, it's really hard as a remote worker, and I think in the remote work world, you lose context that you would get when you're sitting in a room. And I think you have to. When I was at Thomson Reuters, we had a series of management philosophies like watch your shadow. It's not the wheelbarrow, but one of them was assume positive intents. Always assume positive intents. If you go into the room and always assume whoever's writing you means that in the nicest possible way, either they don't and you come out the golden person, right? Or they do and you didn't accidentally blast them for the wrong reason. So I struggle, but I try to live with that is assume positive intents. But there are times where, even I've gotten off the handle on something and I have to go have a chat and say, I'm sorry, I got really cheesed off. I had 5 meetings in a row. This is the 5th time somebody asked me about that stupid topic and I kind of went off on you. Sometimes you just got to own it and move past it. And sometimes there are people I have struggles with communicating with. I try to find more official channels to route that. So instead of maybe the Teams chat to ask for something, I'll make a Jira ticket for them and say, these are my requirements. That way there's no feelings involved. And it's a personal thing. It's because I struggle with communication with some people. Yeah. Oh, now it's time. All right. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Fun stuff. And then I got that dog in the office. It was funny what you asked the AI for. I then asked it to show me Mike Tyson in an office, and it actually just made a really nice picture of Mike Tyson in a professional setting. I'm like, oh, that doesn't communicate anything. It looks like Mike Tyson in the business.
It's actually that's a really good example of the challenge of the immaturity of AI right now, right? Too, right? It's what it's fed, it's going to give you back.
Oh yeah, some of those images of like people arguing in an office, like the